Okay, so we're talking about the inventory. We touched on the inventory. Of course, it tells us information about the sales, information about the orders and stuff like that. Keep track of orders. So order obviously will be another object, right? So somewhere in our documentation we will say that another type of object that we want to be able to support will be look how many of those I already have, so I can actually start moving on to the next line or something, right? Something as inventory order, right, should be recognized as another prominent object in the system, and we can execute these orders. We can create the order, we can send it out, we can keep track of it, we can receive the order, we can say that the order is now fully processed, complete, and we can recycle it the next time we want to reorder, right? So there's many things that can be done with ordering things, and clearly it would be very helpful to have an object like that we can utilize. And of course, anytime this object is in memory, of course it will be executing its own set of database queries, which will be searching information in a database, displaying it dynamically, and being able to be somewhat smart about things like alerting the user there could be duplicate orders or orders that in any kind of conflict or something like that. All right, very good then. So ordering is a separate supplier. I don't know. I mean, we can have maybe a database of suppliers. Do we need a separate object for supplier in our memory? Maybe not, because when we create these order objects, we can basically keep track of the supplier's set of the attributes inside each order, right? It's when we say manage suppliers, it could be a separate use case where we essentially keep track of suppliers, their addresses, their tax IDs, and things like that. Keep track of orders for a period of 1 year from the time of the last order. So it's basically, this is something like a regulation, like your telephone company will keep track of your phone calls for a certain period of time, right? Similarly, the business may have this requirement that we need to retain the record for a certain period of time, and generally speaking, the records normally are never deleted, they're just archived, right? So for instance, when you cancel the sale record itself is never deleted, it's just marked as being canceled, but it's still there. Okay, it's a very considered to be improper design if you actually deleting information which was already entered and somehow being formed in your system. So inventory management, like we already mentioned over here, manage inventory, right? Most likely done by store manager or maybe some other personnel, right? Add, remove items from inventory. Do these have to be separate use cases? I don't know, but potentially yes, right? So potentially it's like this manage inventory could be like a main screen, but later on there could be some other bubbles that say add, remove, update, things like that. So there could be maybe some additional, I don't want to really overcrowd or overpopulate this drawing with any information, but there could be clearly additional little pieces that sort of derive from there and extend it like this. Support receiving and warehouse operations, including reporting spoilage. All right. So again, let's think about the set of these ideas. No new actors, possibly new objects such as inventory receipt or again, we could reuse the inventory order and specify that there is the inventory has been received. Warehouse operations, perhaps we need to keep track of items like the actual location, right? So we need to be able to have some sort of a database that says, all right, so this is all the warehouse locations that we have, like, shelves, on the floor, in the back room, and everywhere else. And we want to keep track of where things are potentially are located. Spoilage, we need to be able, so it says here, broken, spoiled, damaged items have to be removed from inventory with proper authorization, right? So most likely it's part of the inventory management, right? It's just part of one of these manage inventory things that over here you can say, essentially remove inventory, and perhaps somewhere there could be a comment that says due to the spoilage and so forth, or breakage or something, right? So not necessarily one new use case, but some details to make it more realistic over here in our discourse here. Support automatic reorder of items. Now this is interesting, is that automatic reorder is not done by a human, right? Essentially we need to be able to when people say automatic reorder, it may not be exactly some really sophisticated subsystem that constantly runs and observes the need to reorder, like basically checks the inventory, finds out that certain quantities fall below the specific threshold and so forth. It can be simply yet another function on the manage inventory list of subcases, where we can say basically batch order. So we can say that at least once per day or once per week, someone has to log into the system, click on manage inventory, and say batch order or automatic order, and it'll generate a set of orders which still may need to be approved, right? And which still need to be reviewed, and so forth. So anything that says in the business requirement automatic, I view as with a little bit of skepticism. It's not like artificial intelligence subsystem is doing everything. It can, even if it says automatic, is basically automatic generation of multiple orders, but it can still be done perhaps with a click of a button of an actual human at the sitting in front of a computer screen, right? So just be aware. And of course, reporting. Reporting is very important in any system. So reporting is a significant area. Essentially, this is accountability. This is our business of record and everything. Tax paying, and generally speaking. So we have inventory report. We have the cashier report. We have the register report with the list. And of course, there it will say which items should be displayed, right? So for instance, if we're on the inventory report, naturally, what is the product ID or whatever you want to show for the item, name, quantity, threshold, supplier, a quantity of items in pending orders and things like this, right? So quantity of items in pending orders is basically maybe complicating the situation with database query, because what we want to say, you see how we can have, right, so over here somewhere, when we talk about the database, we say that we could have items like inventory table of some kind, right? So item or product ID, of course, will be at the top of that set of information, right? Like we said, description, price, whatever we want to include. And separate table may have order, right? Information about orders. So an order record, again, will have perhaps a list of items, right? So we can have a list of items over here, and somewhere, maybe in a separate table, like order item, we can have this item ID that is being ordered. So right, so for the database programmer, it's important to write the queries that don't just show me the inventory. You also have to check the orders, see what orders are active, and from there go and find the individual items with the same ID and other information about that specific order, right? So that is just like, if I was asking you to also program the database piece for it, that obviously is something that is very common in reporting, that normally you don't look just at one table, but you need to be able to correlate your information with, with other parts of the database, other tables with the database if you're using a relational database. Right? So similar cache report, what you need to be able to show. And sometimes when you look at these fields that you need to be able to show, sometimes you may realize that when you were identifying the objects and the data attributes and other, significant pieces of information, that you may discover that you actually missed someone. So which suggests that this process obviously requires a few iterations through rereading it, trying to understand it, again interviewing the users and so forth. So it's a highly iterative process, and again the outcome of this work is that we definitely want to get all of this information, but also our next stage is that we need to have a very clear set of use cases that we want to be able to support by the system, and the set of use cases essentially are the description of what the system can do. And the collection of all the use cases is basically, I can say that basically this equals the collection of all use cases are functional specification, right? This is our functional specification because it tells us everything that the system can do. And by the way, your functional specification with description of all the use cases has to freeze at some point, right? You cannot just allow feature creep endlessly, because all of a sudden, if you add something new to the system, it's inherently may be affecting too many things. And at some point, you just say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This set of use cases comprising this functional spec is pretty much what this initial version of the system will do, and you have to freeze it. The users have to say, okay, we agree, everybody signs off on it and say, this is the system that we're going to build. It's not, sometimes you have to change, and make updates and just sometimes you have to deal with those situations. But at some point you just have to recognize that you're moving on to actually doing other types of analysis and other types of, especially when you go to the implementation stages, the functional specification can no longer change, right? So functional spec, I doubt that you can seriously build any non-trivial commercial software system without actually functional spec. Some people make a mistake of saying, oh, we have a very good business requirement document, so we'll just kind of go off of that information, have our programmers learn what that information is, and let them program, right? So then everybody else decides, what would be appropriate to have, okay, let's have an inventory order, let's have this and that, and so forth. But what puts everybody on the same track and connects everybody is actually functional specification, which is simply a collection of use cases. There's actually also a non-functional specification which deals with security, infrastructure requirements, and things like that. But that's a different story. I don't want to talk about this right now. So just realize that these are all the aspects and types of analysis that you want to keep in mind with respect to going through this initial analysis of the business spec. All right, so